Ladies and gentlemen, could I have your attention, please? Ladies and gentlemen, could I have your attention, please? I know some of you are still registering, but we need to get underway. Thank you very much for your attention. I welcome you today, and I thank everyone for attending, but I'd also especially like to thank those who are addressing us today, many of them not related to the club, but more by the connection to the race. Thank you, everyone. We'll move straight through this presentation. I would like to thank Rolex for its support, and especially because Patrick Boutellier could not join us today. He asked me to make sure that I could relay this on his behalf. Rolex is proud to be a part of the 72nd edition of the Sydney to Hobart Yacht Race, and Rolex and all those connected to Patrick wishes everyone well and the skippers and crews a safe race to Hobart. I know you're here to listen to the weather report. I do thank again the representatives of the BOM, especially the New South Wales Weather Services people. Jane Golding is here, and as manager of this unit, she will give you the briefing for the weather today. Please welcome Jane.
Good morning, everyone. Just checking people at the back can hear me okay? Yep. Really?
I've got the speakers on outside, but they're not on in here.
I'll do my best to project then. So just firstly, we're going to go through just a safety briefing from the Bureau, go through some of the terminology we use, what that means, where you can find our services, the weather forecasts and other observations services the Bureau offers for marine users. And then towards the end of this, I'll run through the forecast for the race. So convention is when we talk about forecast winds on our forecasts, that's the 10-minute average of the wind, so that's the mean speed, and that's the wind at 10 metres above the surface or the sea. The winds will be stronger than that. The gusts can get up to 40% higher than that. So for a 25-knot mean speed, that's a gust. You'll likely see gusts of 35 knots. And again, with showers and thunderstorms, it's quite possible to get some higher gusts than that. So for most of the race, it's not looking like there will be thunderstorms over the waters, so that's not an issue. But down towards Tassie, from the 29th, I believe, I'll go through that, there are some showers coming through. Waves, we talk in terms of the seas, so the wind, the locally wind-driven waves, and the swell, so the waves that are generated from further afield. Both of those terms are used in the forecasts and available on the graphics on the Bureau's webpage. Also, another term that you'll hear in the forecast is significant wave height. So that refers to the average of the highest third of the waves. Once the wind speed gets above a certain level, the Bureau issues warnings. So the first warning kicks in at strong wind strength, and that kicks in at about 25 knots. So strong winds certainly might be a player in this race, and certainly in the northeasterlies. Other thresholds for warnings are gale, storm force and hurricane force. So storm force on the wind warnings does refer to that wind category. So the coastal waters forecasts come out of the regional forecasting centres, and there are they extend from the coast out to 60 nautical miles seaward. For the coasts are split up into different zones. So the first zone that you'll go through is the Sydney coastal waters, and then down the Illawarra coast, the Batemans coast, and then the south coast waters, and then there's quite a few zones as you head south of the south coast, which ends at Gabo Island. So we've got the East Gippsland Coast, the east of Flinders Island, upper East Coast, lower East Coast and the South East Coast zones. They're all relevant for this race. The coastal waters forecasts, they're issued twice a day at around 5 o'clock in the morning and then again at around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And they are also monitored really closely and updated if we're out too much on what the forecast says as observations come in. So this is an example of a coastal waters forecast. You can see at the top there's as it appears on the web. So at the top there's a bit where you can link to any warnings that are issued, and then there's a section for a broad overview, synoptic situation, and then the more detailed information on a day-by-day base. So this example is for this is the Sydney coastal waters. I grabbed it off the web this morning. This is an example of a coastal wind warning. So most of the detail now, we changed over a couple of years ago. All the detail of the winds is in the actual forecast. The warnings as they go out, they're there more as a pointer to look a bit more closely at the forecast because the wind's going through those thresholds for warnings. Another relevant forecast is the high seas forecast. So as mentioned, the coastal waters forecast ends 60 nautical miles off the coast. The high seas is a much broader area, and the forecasts that go out are also much broader. So the relevant one for the race is the southeastern area. Is there an example? There's an example. So those also are issued twice a day. There are several places you can get the forecast information from. The web, the forecast will go out as text but also as graphics. So the graphics for the winds go out to 7 days, again issued in the early morning and then in the afternoon. The seas and two swell partitions are also, there's graphics for those that go out to our Med-Eye viewer, which you can access through the front page of the Bureau. And that's just an example of what it looks like. There's other information on our webpage. There's a marine services section, and you can get tide information from this webpage, as well as sea level, currents, and all the relevant forecasts for the marine area. We also do have a light version of the webpage, which is a bit easier on data. So the URL for that's at the bottom. Forecasts are also available on Inmarsat, HF, VF, VHF radio, as with the details up there. So they're broadcast pretty regularly, particularly on HF. And just lastly, there's a portal for yacht races with services for yacht races, which you can access through the Bureau's webpage as well. So the link to this is on the marine page, which is at the bottom of the front page. Sure you know all this already, but the Bureau's had a bit of a campaign the last couple of years with the marine industry, just to reinforce those messages. Check the warnings, weather, check the winds, check the waves, and check the tides. And that's as much as I've got as far as a safety briefing, but I just thought we could run through the forecast conditions now. So I will just move right on to that. So I've got up on the screen satellite imagery and the MSLP analysis pulled off our webpage this morning. So this is the both taken at 5 a.m. this morning. So the key drivers of the weather over the race are that high that's sitting in the Tasman Sea. There's quite a complex trough over northwest Australia, which is confusing, I guess, the forecast out past about the 28th, 29th. And we've also got some fronts coming through from the Southern Ocean. So the first front, which will bring a southerly change to the Tasmanian area and a wind change to southern New South Wales. That's that cloud band you can see off the southwest tip of WA. So that front's due to arrive in southeast Australia on the evening of the 26th or the morning of the 27th. Just pulled up how the next 4 days progress, so starting from today. You can see that high pressure system, these are the mean sea level charts for today and tomorrow, so that high pressure system really remains anchored in the Tasman for the next few days, which should drive the northeasterly flow down the New South Wales coast and over to Tasmania. You can see the front progresses eastwards over the next 4 days, with it coming the forecast progs at the moment suggesting late on the 26th. And you can also see that low pressure trough that is over Western Australia at the moment really kind of becomes a dominant feature over Central Australia by the 27th. So we are expecting a low to form in the Bight around about that time. Not suggesting it'll move over Tasmania, but it's just something I guess to keep an eye on for the boats arriving on the 29th onwards. For the race conditions, the guidance has been very consistent for several days now, and pointing to a fresh northeasterly in the harbour at around 1 or 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock on Monday. And then as you head outside the heads, that northeasterly just continues to strengthen throughout the day on Monday. Low tide is close to 2 o'clock at Port Denison, and with the next high tide coming through at 7:30 at night. So seas, particularly outside the heads, will be pretty choppy, but the weather is looking pretty good for the Sydney coast on Monday. Few storms through Western Sydney possible, but the coast is looking pretty good as far as weather goes. So nice for the spectators. And yeah, you can just see the Boxing Day forecast as it stands at the moment. So slight chance of a shower in the afternoon with the storm as well. Again, those more likely in the western suburbs of Sydney rather than over the harbour. So by 5 o'clock on Monday, the guidance, again, it's been pretty consistent, pointing towards a fresh northeasterly extending down New South Wales waters. Again, still dry. Those storms should remain over the land. There is so the winds during the course of the afternoon to pick up, and I'd say 20 to 25 knots is a pretty good guess at the moment, or pretty good forecast. But certainly can't rule out 30 knots. So I guess there might be a strong wind warning on this day. We'll just have to see what happens with that front that approaches. That's really going to govern how strong it gets. There's not much of a swell at the moment, so just a low easterly background swell, less than a metre I'd say, so most of the seas will be wind driven. By Monday night, so there is a bit of uncertainty at the moment with the strength of that southerly, so that I should mention that the guidance is still grappling with that, and that's related to still trying to figure out what's happening with this Western Australia trough. Again, the best guess at the moment, the timing is pretty consistent. There'll be a wind change come through the southern tip of New South Wales sometime, late evening, close to midnight. I guess the strength really is where the uncertainty lies at the moment. So best guess at the moment is it'll be fresh, but the guidance is actually playing around with it a lot weaker. So I guess just stay tuned. The southerly could be a lot lighter than the current forecast of 15 to 25 knots, but going through Merimbula at around about midnight, or give or take a few hours. It's a dry change, not expecting any storms or showers on that change. Oh, and that's, as I just mentioned the uncertainty. So that's the most recent guidance that's come in from the European. It's a lot lighter, but I guess consistently over the last few days, the forecast winds have been, the change has been a bit stronger. So, the guidance is still grappling with what will happen, so just stay tuned. By early Tuesday morning, it looks like the south-southwest change will have progressed up the coast, be near Point Perpendicular. There's another south-southeasterly change moving through Bass Strait, so that's actually on the front. It's another dry change, no showers or storms, but it looks like there'll be pretty flat, light, murky, low cloud coming through with that. The south-southeasterly change somewhere in Bass Strait, 15 to 20 knot range. And then as we move through Tuesday, by mid-morning, south-southeasterly winds over most of the course, although starting to back around. So if the change comes through a lot weaker on, that first change comes through a lot weaker on Monday night, we expect the backing to happen a lot quickly. This forecast is based on a little bit of a stronger change. So Bass Strait, New South Wales coast, fairly light to moderate southeasterlies, 10 to 15 knots. As you go into Bass Strait, 10 to 20 knots. And then over the next 12 hours, the wind's backing around to the east-northeasterly. No significant swell still at this point that I can see, and a sig wave up around 1.5 to 2 metres. So the forecast still moving through to 5 o'clock on Tuesday. The winds have dropped off a bit. The wind's still backing around to the east-northeasterly. There's still some low cloud around, but no rain. So down towards Bass Strait and eastern Tasmania, by this time the favoured guidance still suggesting an east-southeasterly, but again, backing over the next few hours back to a northeasterly. And you can see wind at this direction is either easterly or east-northeasterly across the course. Still no rain at this point. The rain band does come through on this day, so that low that's sitting in developing off in the Bight, there's some fairly good tropical moisture feeding into that system, so the rain that comes through on actually it's the next day on Wednesday could be quite heavy and some low visibility in it. The timing of that, there's still uncertainty obviously with that. It's just 5 days away, but just something to keep an eye on. Other than that, we've got northeasterlies over most of the race, increasing through Bass Strait, feeding into that low as an easterly. And depending on where you are at this point, it does look like there'll be northeasterlies the whole race area. Quite fresh, 15 to 20 knots, and some rain around as well. So I just I've got four of the models that we look at in the bureau, just up on the screen. The latest, the guidance that came in last night, just to show that there is still a bit of uncertainty. So there's uncertainty with the speed of the southerly that comes up the coast on Monday night, but there's also a fair bit of uncertainty in the longer term. But the current guidance is pointing towards. So you can see that low sitting in the Bight. The positions of it are pretty close to each other actually, but they are hinting at some of them are hinting that there'll be a trough develop in Bass Strait or eastern Tasmania, which just means that there'd be a really light, I guess, area of really light winds over that stretch should that happen. And the story on Friday on the current guidance is fairly similar. So just looking a little bit at the currents, this is from the Blue Link guidance that the Bureau produces. So you can see on the left is the 26th, the grab from the 26th of January in the morning, with the northerly current going all the way down the coast and quite warm sea surface temperatures. So on the left. On the right, we've got Tasmania, and the northerly current stops in Bass Strait and drops out as a southerly and then variable current. And Hobart's forecast. So as mentioned, they've got some rain developing on the 28th, and it's not looking particularly sunny, but also not too cold. So 24 degrees, it's not too bad for Tassie this time of year, but a rainy outlook period. And that's all I've got, but if folk have questions, I'm happy to answer questions.
Jane, thank you, and please pass on our thanks to your team and those at the BOM who are so strongly supporting this race. The other Australian agency that's supporting this race, of course, is AMSA, and I'd like you to welcome Peter Kelly to address us.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for asking us to attend. The aim of our presentation this morning is just to give you a little advice as to how you can help us rescue you if you do become or get in trouble. My name's Peter Kelly. I'm a rescue coordinator at our Joint Rescue Coordination Centre. First one is, and we remind everyone every time, is that EPIRBs, they have an aerial, a lanyard and a heavy weight. And the reason for that is the best way for them to communicate to a satellite is for you to throw them off the boat or out of the life raft, which goes against natural tendencies, attach the lanyard and the aerial up just like that there. When you do that, make sure you ask somebody to monitor it and keep an eye on that beacon so it doesn't drift off or come undone. If it is rough and you're in a life raft, as much as you can, you might have to bring that EPIRB in and hold it upright. Easier said than done, I'm sure. And the other one is just make sure your crews know that you've got manual or automatic activation beacons. The auto ones are you take them out of the bracket and throw them in the water and they go off straight away, whereas the manual, you've physically got to switch them on. All right. POBs, everyone is carrying one. Can you make sure that they're up high, the aerial extends, and as far as possible when you're drifting around, try and keep that aerial pointed to the sky as per those two pictures there. Next one, please. All right, what will happen if you do activate your EPIRB or your POB, personal locator beacon? You will hear an audible beep, hopefully, and you will hear a flashing light. Oh, sorry, you'll see a flashing light. A transmission will go to our satellites, and then they will be sent down to us in Canberra. At the moment, we're trialling a new system, so we're getting the responses fairly quickly. So even if you transmit for about a minute, there is a good chance that we will get the detection and know you've transmitted on it. It may take longer to get a position, but there is a good chance we'll get it earlier. First thing we'll do is look at it, check your registration, see that you're in the yacht race hopefully, and then we will either talk with the police or the race committee and see if they know anything already about your condition, and then we will initiate a search and rescue incident for you. And we'll keep doing that until we find out that you are safe or it was an accidental activation. Who will we send? At the moment, the top left there, we've got our Melbourne Dornier aircraft. That's on standby all year, and it's on standby during the race. If we have an EPIRB detection or a situation, that'll be our first aircraft that we would be likely to task. It will come up to you, it will tell you it's a fixed-wing aircraft, and it will try and communicate with you, and it will try and communicate with you from like 60 and 80 miles on its way out as well. And then we'll back it up with one of the helicopters, as indicated in those two photos there. We've got a number of helicopters that are on contract and standby up and down the coast throughout your race that we would use, and they all have different capabilities, so we would apply the right helicopter at the right time. One point to note is that most helicopters in Australia cannot conduct a winch transfer of you at night. So it may be, if something goes on wrong, we have to monitor you and watch you overnight, and then get a helicopter there at first light. All right. There are some helicopters, but not all helicopters can help you at night time. So you may have to wait until a boat or in the morning. And the other one there, just a quick plug, that's our new jet. It's currently up in Cairns. However, it's on standby. It would be down in the race in about 3 hours, and it can stay over you for about 7 hours then. So if it's quite busy, we'll send either the jet or the propeller one up the top there. Next one. Who's going to help you from the water? First slide up there, the race, all right? The best people to help rescue people and save people during the race condition or during the race is the other competitors. So please be observant of that, and if you hear a mayday, or be prepared to respond if one of the aircraft asks you to help out. Nemesis on the top right there, that's the New South Wales Police offshore boat. That will be trailing the fleet or sitting around the middle of the fleet down to around Bass Strait. Won't be going across at the moment. However, that will be our first response for a surface vessel. And then we've got the volunteer marine rescue groups along the coast, and then we've also got a number of merchant vessels up and down that we would call and ask them to come and help you as well. And they may just simply come and stand over you and provide us with advice, particularly if you don't have a radio or something like that. Next one, please. All right, how can you help yourself? If you activate your EPIRB accidentally or inadvertently, please, by all means possible, tell us straight away. There's no penalty or anything like that, but it means that we can quickly establish that you are not in danger or in trouble, and we can switch off that response. We treat every EPIRB detection as a distress situation until we can turn it off. So by all means possible, please let somebody know that it's been an accidental activation, even if it's under a minute, all right? If you sit there and it goes off and you quickly switch it off, up to about 40 seconds is okay, but at 50 seconds, it starts sending your position out. Stay on board the yacht or life raft until you're otherwise directed. All right, I always say step up into the life raft out of the yacht, because yachts do stay afloat a lot longer than people expect, and it's much easier to find a yacht with people in it than to find a life raft or to find people in the water. So unless there's a danger of you being trapped or entangled on the vessel when it sinks, as far as possible, stay on the boat. And particularly when the helicopter arrives, do what you're told by the helicopter aircrew. Please don't take your life in your own hands and jump over the side and think that they'll come chasing you. Makes it a little bit more difficult. Assign somebody to take responsibility for your EPIRB. As I said, that is the guiding feature in the middle of the ocean for you, so you need to have someone looking for that. Keep it on until you're told to turn it off. The aircrew, if you're being rescued, or the vessel rescuing you, will give direct guidance about when you can switch that EPIRB off. Use visual signals to attract attention. I say that we have scenarios where we've got an approximate position for you in the middle of the ocean of where you are. We send an aircraft, the aircraft flies around in that position and it'll pass over the top of you a number of times. People think that they've found them and they're happy. What in fact they're doing is they're trying to find you. So if you see the aircraft and it's flying around you a number of times, don't assume it knows where you are. Pop off your flares and pop one off to attract their attention and then another one to confirm it, even at night, because they'll see it on their MVGs. And most of the time what we're trying to do is get you to fire your flares so that we can see where you are. And use multiple beacons. If one beacon goes off, we treat it as a distress situation, but we'll try and contact you initially. If two beacons go off, registered to the same boat, we will try and contact you, but we will already be tasking an aircraft to come and respond, all right? They have a random jitter in each of the frequencies so that we can break out two beacons close together. So activate two. If there's 5 or 6 of you in the water, maybe activate 2 of the PLBs and keep the other 4 for later. But don't be concerned, and sometimes people are concerned about activating too many. 2 is a good number and it lets us respond much quicker. Helicopter transfers. Listen out on channel 16, turn the volume up, because as the next line says, we need you to follow directions for the helicopter. The crew on the helicopter practice winching from yachts. They will look at every case and they will make a determination about which way they're going to do that rescue. All right, so please, channel 16, turn the volume up and listen, and be prepared because there's going to be a lot of wind, particularly on some of the helicopters we now use. If possible, start your engine or tow a stream of drag so that you head on into the wind. Again, the aircrew will ask you to do that, and if you can, particularly a certain heading, because the helicopter won't actually be hovering, he'll stationary. It's much easier for him to hover with you slowly into a slight headwind. Turn your radars off, and also be ready to launch a life raft, because quite often, because of your mass and guys, the aircrew may get on board and then ask each person to jump into the life raft individually, and they'll winch you out of the life raft, which is much safer. Medical assistance. If you have unfortunately get injured or you're sick, you have 2 race doctors in your committee who are there to respond and look after you for minor injuries and conditions. Your first point of contact for a medical condition or an injury should be the race committee. They will then make a determination if it's a serious case, and they will come to us as we have specialist medical advice available who will provide you with advice, and they also provide us with advice about the best way to rescue you or to take you off. So at some point we may become involved and we would send a helicopter, or we may get one of our aircraft to come out and drop you some good drugs to help with some pain. But again, first point of contact, go to the race committee. That said, if it's a really serious injury, never be scared to call 000, particularly if you're close inshore, or to call the JRCC directly. And finally, return voyage. I know you're not on board, you've offloaded your boat, the returning crew is bringing it home. We have more incidents on the returning voyage of EPIRBs and boats getting into trouble than we have on the journey down. And if you take into account that when you're in Hobart, suddenly the Melbourne and Hobart people arrive, and the Melbourne and Devonport people are down there as well, and they all start coming back, please make sure the contact details and the EPIRB registration details are all up to date, because it's hard to get hold of you when you're on a plane going off to your next race. All right. Is there any questions at all, please? Yes.
Which, if any, of your assets can home in on an AIS?
We've got 2 fixed-wing assets at the moment could home in on it. They can see AIS and drive to it, but that's why in Australia we use the beacons that only activate with the 121.5, which is all aircraft can home that. All right. All right, thank you. Have a great race.
Peter, thank you very much. We also enjoy tremendous support from the New South Wales Government, and particularly the Roads and Maritime Services. Drew Jones is the representative of the RMS. He's in charge of on-water events, and I welcome you to the platform. Drew.
Thank you. I'll just get a...
We're just getting a slide package up.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, John. I'm going to keep it very brief. We create an exclusion zone for you guys to do your start, and we create basically it creates a spectator area and a competitors area. My message is basically once you enter the exclusion zone, which is activated from 12 p.m, please stay inside the exclusion zone. The only time you need to come out is either out the end after you've started, out to east and go to sea, which is where we want to see you all go, or if you've got some other emergency you need to get out of the exclusion zone. But please don't be going into the spectator area to hoist sails or doing it for any other reason going out. If you have got a real need to go out of there, into the spectator area, because of navigational issues, then by all means take it. But what it does is it causes a lot of chaos for the spectators in there, and they're all obviously trying to move and follow the race fleet as well. So just be very mindful that if you do cross over, that it causes chaos on the other side. The exclusion zone buoys each have a 60 kilo weight on the bottom. So if you do manage to hook one up with a keel, you may be going for a swim with a knife to get it off, as we had last year. But yeah, please, that's basically all I got to say. Have a great race, and thanks very much. Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's important that I acknowledge that there are a lot of volunteers that help us with this race, and none, not the least of which is our race committee, represented by Tim Cox. I now call to the stage.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2016 Rolex Sydney Hobart Yacht Race. One of my prime concerns with the race is your safety, and of course safety is everybody's business. I need to emphasise the need for you to make sure that all your crew have full knowledge of the equipment, safety equipment on the boat, how it works, where it's stowed, and how to look after it, and particularly their personal responsibilities for PLBs. Man overboard procedures need to have been well established, they need to be briefed, they need to be exercised before the race, and they need to be understood by all personnel on board. For this race, we've probably got about 1,000 PLBs, so care and maintenance of them is very important. You've already heard about inadvertent transmissions. If you have one, call me. You have my number, and you can call me 24/7 as far as I'm concerned. The sooner you call me, the sooner I can call AMSA and get them off my back. We will call you on the sat phone. I'll call you any way I can to get the thing turned off. Flying is expensive. It's about $78,000 per hour to launch a helicopter to go and look at you. So I'd prefer that we get it turned off. So please check your sat phones on a regular basis and preferably leave them turned on. The decision to race and the decision at Green Cape both require careful consideration by skippers, particularly at Green Cape, where when you look at Sailing Instruction 41, it says your HF is working properly, your life raft numbers are on board and haven't been damaged, your engine is working, the boat and crew are in good condition and satisfactory to meet the challenges that lie ahead in Bass Strait and on the coast of Tasmania, and it requires a comprehensive consideration. There are only two ways you can check in at Green Cape. One is with JBW and the other one, Hobart Race Control. There is no other way of doing it. For the start this year, we have large numbers, 91 boats, 3 starting lines. They've been published down below, and they're not negotiable for those who don't like them. Allow plenty of time to check in, please. Early is good, and the boats will be on the starting line from about 9:30. During the starting procedures, which I'll come to in a moment, please give consideration to the others who are out there starting. And remember that within the sailing instructions, there is advice given as to where you should be from the preparatory signal to the start signal. So stay in those areas and don't go down into the areas of other lines, please. And for those of you who are aggressive at the start and need to get those 2 yards closer to Hobart, then just remember that there are 1.2 million yards between the start line and the finish line in Hobart. So those 2 yards you want to get might not be worth it, and a collision will generally ruin your day. 3 yachts collided last year. 2 of them finished at the Watsons Bay Hotel, and the third one made it as far as the Sound Pigs. So for the start, at about 20 minutes before the start, you will be advised that the markers of the start lines, of the 3 start lines, are in position. There will be a countdown of 10 seconds to the warning signal, a further countdown to the prep, and a countdown to 1 minute. There will be no further countdowns after that. After the start, each start line will advise either clear start or an individual recalls. and if there's an individual recall, it will be 5 minutes approximately after the start. The communications required throughout the race, which require a half mark of 100%, daily positions are at starting from the start, 17:05, 00:05 and 07:35. Those times each day from the start till you finish on 4483. There is a listening sked at 12:05. There is VHF and HF at the CYC Eden station. If you are entering Eden and require assistance or a berth there, please call the CYC Eden team. Don't forget to call to Hobart Race Control when Tasman Island light bears 000. And also if you're caught as you enter the river, and if you're in the river during a sked, and you're too busy, then call me after it or ring me on the phone and let me know what's going on. And don't forget to advise the finish line in accordance with sailing instruction 43.4. Retiring boats should remain on the sked until they reach port. And if you are intending to retire, then I would be grateful if you would inform me of the reasons for your retirement so that when I ring your boat contacts, I'm not left to play some goldfish song of ignorance as to why you have retired. For those of you who have protests, early notification is recommended, and I also draw your attention to the fact that there are 2 New Zealand judges in the international jury, and you should bear that in mind for any protest that you should submit. And I do ask that when you do get to port that you call Hobart Race Control and you advise us that you are in port. When you finish, the declaration is required within 6 hours, and an email receipt for that declaration is articulated in the sailing instructions. There has already been some words mentioned about the return journey. I'll just add to that to say that the return journey is much more risky than the journey down there. There is nobody looking after you. The weather has a large part in the return journey and people working to a time plan. I do strongly recommend that you have a good nav plan. It's well known to people other than those that are on the boat that people like the Marine Rescue New South Wales app, which is free and reasonably easy to use, that you put your data into that and allow people to monitor you. Twice a day will do, just 2 check-ins. It helps with your next of kin. Also, you can advise St Helens Marine Rescue and Malakuta of the Victorian Coast Guard. You might also advise the crews who are bringing your boats back that navigation using electronic charts close to shore is generally not recommended. Most of the boats that have been aground return journeys have used electronic charts and have found that the hydrographer, despite his protestations, has not been into that bit of water and that somebody's left some rocks there since the chart was made. Hobart Race Control is 24/7. You can ring me anytime you miss a sked, or Justine. You have our numbers. You can ring me anytime that you've got a problem, and I'm only too happy to help you. For the start, the wind is from the northeast and it's on the last bit of the ebbing tide. There will be 2 camera persons, one on Wild Oats 11 and the other on Scallywag, that will jump into the ocean and be rescued by a chase boat. So I'm advised. My only other recommendation about safety at sea is that my strongest recommendation to you is keep out of the water. Secondly, you only get into a life raft if you really have to, because they're most uncomfortable, very unpleasant, and someone is always seasick. And secondly, and lastly, if you're getting into a life raft, it's a good way to step down rather than be stepping up. Flying Fish Arctos, your radio check is unsatisfactory, as is on taps. You need to pursue those today to make sure that you're up to speed, because they will not pass the Green Cape requirements as of this performance that we have so far witnessed. The following yachts have spots and safety outstanding: 2 True, Landfall, After Midnight, Patrice 6 and Pizzazz. And I'd like those completed by 1300 today, please. And outstanding documentation M3 and Guacamo. I might say that this race has probably been the best one in the last 15 years for paperwork, and I thank you all for your cooperation on getting the paperwork in time, and I wish you a fair wind, following sea, and good passage to Hobart. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. We also get enormous support in Tasmania, first from the Tasmanian Government and Tasports, but also from our finishing partner, Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania. And I'm just going to call on Biddy Badnack to make a quick address about that.
Thanks very much, John. I'll intend to be brief. A couple of perennials. Berthing. You've been allocated a berth. You must go to that berth. You'll be directed by the dock master in the club's rubber ducky. You'll need fenders. Vacating the berth, you'll be required to vacate by 9 a.m. on the 3rd of January. If you intend to leave your yacht in Hobart, contact the bosun down at the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania and he'll arrange an alternative berth. Trackers, once again, Bogues are donating the Bogues Premium Beer, and this will be handed to you in exchange for your tracker. So from the Liaison Centre, they will deliver the beer. The Liaison Centre is located in the Rolex Village, and they're there to help, and just call on them at any time. Prize giving will be held at the Federation Concert Hall, the Grand Chancellor, at 10 a.m. on New Year's Day. Have a happy Christmas, a great race and a safe trip to Hobart. Thank you.
Just to conclude the formalities, I do ask that if you have not signed for your attendance today, please make sure you do so before leaving this room. I do want to also acknowledge the support we have from the Royal Australian Navy, which goes on standby as soon as the race starts. I'd like to thank everyone for your participation today, and I join with every sentiment to wish you a safe and really very good, successful campaign in this race. Thanks for your attention.